In the Bible, they had to rebuild the temple, and I think the time has come to rebuild. Well, my fellow Universalists, most of them, when they talk about the old Universalist church, they talk about it like it's a funeral. They say the old gals served us well, but those days are long gone now. And they don't really have much of a game plan for the future of Universalism. It seems to just be kind of assumed that, yeah, we'll just kind of increase in our numbers and we'll just fill a bunch of random denominations. And I don't think that's much of a strategy. And I'm very passionate about missions, as I've said before, whether it be to Christians or non Christians. And I think the only way we're going to be able to reach non Christians and Christians alike about universal salvation is creating institutions. Because one universalist can do a lot, don't get me wrong, but he can't do everything. He can do a lot to have an impact. But if we're ever going to have any real success and really be able to measure up to what our ancestors did, we're going to have to create institutions, whether it be a brand new denomination like the Old Universalist Church, it be an association of churches of all sorts of different backgrounds, or it be some kind of missionary society that's dedicated to spreading universalism, or a mixture of all of those things. I don't know. But what is for certain is that we need a new denomination of some kind. I don't think it needs to be exactly like the old one. In fact, the old Universalist Church actually had a bunch of problems. Like a lot of congregations were always out there. A lot of Unitarians, for instance, were in the church. And I definitely think that a new Universalist church would definitely need to be different. For one, I think we need a more top-down government, but I'll get to that in just a minute. The shocking thing to me is how few of my fellow Universalists really seem to agree with me on the need for some kind of new denomination. Like, a lot of my fellow Universalists, and not to criticize it too much at least, just seem to kind of be going with the rogue Universalist plan, which is you're a Universalist, learn your stuff about what Universalism is, and start spreading it. And that strategy has worked fairly well. A lot of people have become Universalists that way. And we are growing because of that kind of stuff. But rogue Universalists are never going to be able to churn the whole nation upside down for Christ and his universal love for all souls. And what I've realized is that a denomination of some kind is essential. And the only other Universalist I've really seen talk about this is Pentecostal Universalist, or technically I think the full name is like Faith of Life Ministries Pentecostal Universalist. But he's talked about this before. He said, and he's a Pentecostal, I'm not, but he pointed out with the whole Pentecostal movement that in the early 20th century, Pentecostals did not exist, and then they started off very small. But he really made a really good point that Pentecostals, what they did is, and they didn't do this perfectly, but they created organizations to spread Pentecostalism. They created new denominations with a top-down government. They created missionary institutions, and they began to spread Pentecostalism all across America and the world. And then Pentecostalism became, in the second wave and all that, becomes the charismatic movement. And the charismatic movement spreads into all kinds of different churches, eventually to the point where it's even spread into churches like the Catholic Church. And it's just been widely successful. Now, Pentecostal or charismatic Christianity is like a quarter of the world, the quarter of the Christian population. And it's a very successful form of Christianity. Within only a few decades, churches like the Church of God or the Church of God in Christ and churches like that have risen to similar levels of pre-established denominations in America, which is very impressive. And I think that he made a really good point saying that in the same way Universalists should have a similar strategy, we should create an institution of some kind, an institution with a solid biblical foundation, which is why I have a problem with the CUA, the Christian Universalist Association, because it does a lot of things right, but at the same time, it does not have a very solid foundation. And essentially, he said, and this is pure speculation kind of, that we should create a biblically solid Universalist institution to spread it, and that we should just start spreading and stuff. And I think that's very important. And I will confess, I'm not perfect at this myself. I'm still learning how to evangelize and do a lot of things myself. So if I were to start some kind of project like that, it probably would be a few years off because I'm still a bit young and I'm still learning a thing or two before I really put my life work into it, to that kind of stuff full time. But I do, as I was saying, I'm still learning myself, but I do think that some kind of institution to spread biblical universalism is a necessity. if we're ever going to have a major impact. And that's why I made that whole video, Churches for Christian Universalists. Yeah, a lot of those churches had a bunch of problems. Like, I definitely disagree with a lot of those churches, but they all were Christian Universalist, for better or for worse. And that's why I made that whole list, so a viewer could even have a chance to find a church. And highly recommend you watch that video. I consider it to be one of the most important videos I ever made, for that very reason. And I just think that some kind of institution to spread biblical universalism is necessary. I've said before, the most practical thing that one can do in their own local life is to find a congregation that's open to universalism and to be open about your biblical universalist faith there. Then hopefully move that congregation in a biblical universalist direction. And I think that's the most practical course for most biblical universalists out there. I've also would highly recommend just being honest with everyone you know that you're a Christian Universalist. Like, I recently got into a good conversation with my friend. He asked, what am I religiously? Because, that tends to happen. And I just said, I'm a Christian Universalist. And he's like, Universalist? What's that? And I went for the gist, and now he's interested in the idea. I'm curious to see where that's going to go. But, it's important to be open about our faith. And I think the most practical thing that one can do at the current time, spread universalism, is just be an evangelical person, live a Christian life, a good, godly Christian life, not pharisaical, but, remember the old Winchester profession reminding us to do good works, which is one thing I really appreciate about the Universalist tradition, where doing good works and living a good Christian life is in our very creeds and our professions, and it's at the very heart of what we believe. And that's really stuck with me, that at the very heart of our faith is to live a good Christian life, because it's honoring to God, and the universal salvation that we believe in, this wholeness and happiness, are inseparably connected to a moral Christian living. I really like that. And I just think that the most practical thing we can do is join a church that's open to the idea, and to be as open as we can and talk with as many people as we can about the idea. And yeah, a lot of people are not going to listen. Like, it's an unpopular message for a reason, and it's hard work when you spread universalism. Most of it will fall on deaf ears, or ears that hate you and will call you a follower of Satan. But it's work nonetheless, and God is on our side. I do believe it's ultimately the Holy Spirit working. And pray. I think prayer is very important. But I do think that in the years to come, some kind of, either it'd be reforming the CUA, the Christian Universalist Association, to make it more biblical, make it adopt a statement of faith that is more biblically solid than what it is. I think that it needs a more biblically solid statement of faith, for starters. And either it be reforming the CUA or forming a brand new institution. And I just think that we should try to do what we can. And for Universalists, people that are a part of Universalist churches, or are thinking about starting one, or whatever you're thinking about doing, just try your best to be distinctive from the rest of the Christian world. I said before, probably the biggest factor in the downfall of the Universalist church was it lost its distinctiveness. As the church liberalized, it became just like every other liberal church on the street. Like, the Universalist church by the 20th century, by and large, is very undistinguishable from churches like the Methodist church or the Congregationalist church, which is why they considered merging with the Congregationalists, and why a lot of Universalist churches merged with Methodist churches. And they just became very undistinct, and they lost their salt. They lost the flavor. And I think that being Universalist, we need to be distinctive. We need to be very clear that we need to stand on our principles. I think that standing on what one believes is an incredibly important thing to do. And just be a light, I would have to say. Be a light. Just know what you're talking about. Don't be a fool, and just guide people. And yeah, that's all I can really say, is that the lay Universalist has to do what he can and hope that God will use him to plant seeds. And I do believe that if we do organize together various institutions and things, that slowly but surely we will start seeing a rebuilding of the denomination. I think that people are hungry for universalism, and I think people need to hear the message more than ever. So y'all have a good day. God bless. I think that if they could rebuild the temple in the Bible, I think that we could rebuild our own church. And I've definitely been inspired by other groups of Christians that are trying to rebuild their own denominations at the moment. And I think that we need to do something similar. We need to rebuild our church. It can't be exactly like the old one. In fact, the old one had a bunch of problems, as I said before, so I don't think we should recreate it exactly. But yeah, I just think that somehow, some way, we should reestablish our denomination and get in tune with our heritage. I highly recommend studying Protestant Universalist history, studying the denomination. There are a lot of good books out on there online for free and stuff. I highly recommend. I would highly recommend Reverend Scott Wells on UniversalistChurch.net. That's a really good website in my opinion. He has all those old Universalist creeds and professions on there. A lot of old books and stuff about Universalism. A lot of the basics of what the denomination believes. So if you get anything out of the video, I guess besides being a good evangelical Universalist, I would highly recommend checking out UniversalistChurch.net. We all have a good day. God bless. And check out the video, Churches for Christian Universalists. I hope and pray that you'll be able to find a church that way. God bless. Y'all have a good day. Like, subscribe if you enjoyed the video, and Christ will conquer.